to learn that your actions have consequences. Consequences that affect other people, like me.
Now, I'm sure you've already seen like a bunch of people mention this specific scene when talking about Benson and his character. And while it's a very good scene that I will talk about at length in this video later, first I'd like to shift focus to a scene that I think is even better at making you understand and respect Benson as a person.
Benson? Where am I?
My apartment. Here, eat this. You look terrible.
Why are you being so nice to me?
Look, Rigby, I know we don't always see eye to eye, but we do have one thing in common. I, too, was humiliated on national television.
Now, this scene is from the season 5 episode Expert or Liar, and if you've seen the episode, you'll know most people focus on the Rigby stuff from this episode. But I believe that the scene I just showed you is actually a very important scene for representing Benson's character. But first, let me give you the context of this scene. So the episode starts out with Rigby being an idiot and ending up being embarrassed on television. After being humiliated, he sets out on finding the host of the TV show at all costs to try to get a second chance. He skips work to do this, and to everyone's surprise, when Mordecai tells Benson where Rigby is and that he got humiliated on TV and is trying to redeem himself, Benson doesn't get angry. No. Instead, he seems to feel empathetic towards Rigby and leaves. Next thing we see is Rigby sleeping on a random bench as his quest for his redemption isn't going very well. Then, a car pulls up, and that's when the scene I showed you before takes place. Now, about the actual scene. In the scene, Benson grabs Rigby and takes him to his apartment, feeds him and takes care of him. He then reveals that he was also humiliated on live television, which is why he's caring for Rigby, as he understands his pain and wants to help him. The scene shows us that outside of the park, Benson is a real person with layers to him. He's someone the members of the park crew can rely on, which is not something we always see from him, especially regarding Mordecai and Rigby. Usually, Benson is portrayed as a stuck-up boss who's on Mordecai and Rigby's ass all the time, and when you're watching the show as a little kid, it's easy to feel like that's all he is. You know, he's sitting there as a snot-nosed brat, watching your two favorite cartoon guys have fun, and the boss is ruining shit again. Fuck that guy, right? But this scene shows us that there's more to him than just some stuck-up boss, and he doesn't just want to hate on Mordecai and Rigby all the time. The scene and everything involving him in this episode shows us that he is someone that will come through for those he cares about and sees as friends, even those he can be hard on when it comes to work. When it comes to slacking, both Mordecai and Rigby do it a lot, but Rigby is by far the worst, which would lead you to believe that Benson would dislike him the most, especially with the anger issues they show about him in the show. And when it comes to work, I'm sure he does, but in this episode, Benson shows us that even with that, he cares about Rigby and doesn't want to see him humiliated. It shows us that he can separate work from life when it matters, which is something you can really respect him for. And Benson spends the rest of this episode doing everything he can to help Rigby redeem himself. With that out of the way, we can now move on to get to the episode where Benson has that infamous breakdown. Now, for the uninitiated, Benson's breakdown scene is from the season 3 episode Busted Cart. Now, Busted Cart starts out with Mordecai and Rigby doing something stupid which ends up resulting in the cart being destroyed, right in front of Benson and Mr. Maylard. But because Benson is the park manager, he's the one who actually ends up in trouble. Maylard yells at Benson and tells Benson that if he doesn't get the cart fixed, he'll be fired. Benson responds with the fact that that's almost impossible as the warranty expires tomorrow, and if he wants to make it in time, he'll have to drive day and night. To which Maylard pretty much just says that it's a you problem. After Benson walks out, Mordecai and Rigby come up to him asking if they can help him drive there, as the drive is too long for one person, but Benson declines, stating that they only mess things up. But during the drive to the dealership, it's revealed Mordecai and Rigby hid on the cart and joined the road trip in secret to help Benson. Benson angrily accepts their help, and after some hiccups, things settle down and Mordecai and Rigby end up bonding with Benson, which leads to Benson trusting them enough to keep driving after he gets too tired and goes to sleep. But in typical Mordecai and Rigby fashion, the second they spot a way to slack off, they do it, and they end up at an arcade. They state that they'll only go into the arcade for 30 minutes because they seemingly understand that Benson's job is on the line and they need to act responsibly. But of course, they stay there all night, and this is when the infamous scene happens. Benson wakes up, and when he realizes they're at an arcade, he goes inside and drags Mordecai and Rigby out of there. And then Benson finally snaps.
Turn it off!
Ugh, how long were we in there?
Hours! You were in there for hours! Now we're never gonna make it to the dealership in time! It closes in 30 minutes!
We're sorry. We didn't know it was daytime. There aren't any windows in the arcade.
Excuses! Excuses! How am I supposed to trust you when all you give me are excuses? When are you two gonna learn that your actions have consequences? Consequences that affect other people, like me! Don't you two understand? I'm about to lose my job! You may not care about keeping your jobs, but I care about keeping mine. Because if I lose my job, I have nothing. Do you hear me? I have nothing!
And that was the scene where Mordecai and Rigby, and even myself, and probably many, many other viewers, realized that Benson isn't just some stuck-up boss. He's just a guy trying to keep his job, which Mordecai and Rigby constantly put in jeopardy with their immaturity. You realize that Benson really doesn't ask much from them, and that even in this episode, where they already put his job at risk before, he was still able to put that aside and try to bond with them and become able to trust them and put the fate of his job in their hands again. But once again, that backfired on him due to Mordecai and Rigby screwing him over with their incompetence. Now, of course, they end up making it to the dealership anyway, but that doesn't take away from the fact that Mordecai and Rigby almost screwed Benson over so much that it caused Benson to break down. This episode shows us how much Benson's job matters to him, and it shows us that he does actually enjoy spending time with Mordecai and Rigby even when they've screwed him over. At the end of the day, Benson is just a regular guy trying to keep his job and make ends meet. He tries his best to be a good employee, boss, and friend, and comes through for the people around him when they need him. And when he does yell and scream at Mordecai and Rigby, there's usually a good reason for it. Benson is not an unreasonable person. The show at times paints Benson as someone who has serious anger issues and can't keep his cool, but I think considering what he has to put up with, a lot of the time, he's doing a pretty good job at managing both his temper and the park. And I think that looking back at these episodes as I've gotten older has really allowed me to sympathize more with him and respect him more as a character. If you enjoyed this video, please do let me know. This is a style that I haven't tried in the past. This is like a fucking total channel rebrand and stuff. And I do enjoy making content focused on regular show. It's one of my favorite cartoons. So if you enjoyed this, subscribe, and I'll see y'all next time. Later.